Hi there, I'm Kala. Ever been told, on your own birthday, that no one's coming? Not even your parents? Yeah, mine actually wrote that to my best friend, said I should just deal with it. But that wasn't the worst part. They threw a barbecue the same day, called it a real family gathering, and posted the pictures like I didn't exist. They used my name to open credit cards. They faked my signature. Then they held a backyard cleansing ceremony to erase me. Why? Why would your own family go that far just to silence you? And what do you do when the people who raised you start using love as a weapon? Let me tell you what I did. The letter that didn't even have my name. The letter wasn't even addressed to me. It showed up in Narina's mailbox 2 days before my 33rd birthday, nestled between her utility bill and a coupon flyer for frozen pizza. The envelope was hand-addressed, the penmanship unmistakable, tight, sharp cursive with that little flourish my mother always used when she was trying too hard to appear composed. Narina stared at it like it might explode. "It's from your mom," she said quietly, not meeting my eyes. I raised an eyebrow. "Birthday card?" She hesitated, then handed it to me. "Kala, I don't think you should read this right now." That's when I knew. Birthday cards don't come with warnings. I took it anyway. My fingers were steady, but my stomach wasn't. The seal peeled away with that slow, papery sound, and inside was a single sheet of lined stationery. 7 words. "Don't expect anyone at her birthday. Deal with it." No signature, no explanation. Just that sentence, aimed like a dart at the center of my spine. I folded the letter and slid it into the drawer under our grocery lists, next to expired coupons and takeout menus. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink for a moment. But something behind my ribs curled tight and didn't let go. Narina sat across from me at the kitchen island. Her face was drawn, cautious, as if she were afraid I might break. "You okay?" "I'm tired," I said. She nodded, knowing better than to ask of what. It wasn't the first time my mother had made an occasion feel like a debt. When I was 9, I asked for a chocolate cake for my birthday. What I got was a lecture and a pair of wool socks. "Do you know how hard it is to put food on this table?" she said as I held the socks in my lap. "You should be grateful." Gratitude. That was the currency in our household. Every hug had a price tag. Every "I love you" came stapled to a receipt. "You think your birthday matters more than the woman who raised you?" That was her favorite line, followed closely by, "I gave up my whole life for you, don't forget that." As if existing had been a burden I forced her to carry. Thane, my father, never intervened. He just disappeared into the background like wallpaper, present, but silent. When he did speak, it was always something like, "Let your mother handle it," or worse, "Don't start trouble." So I learned not to start trouble. I learned to swallow disappointment like aspirin. Not pleasant, but necessary. By the time I was 16, I stopped expecting birthday parties. By 21, I stopped mentioning the date altogether. But even then, I held onto a tiny, frayed string of hope. Maybe one day, they'd show up without a grudge in tow. I was 33 now, and I finally realized that string had been severed years ago. Narina stayed quiet for a while, sipping from a chipped blue mug that read, #1 Plant Mom. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. It was full, like a room that had just been told a secret. "I know you don't want to hear it," she said eventually, "but that letter? It's cruel." I gave a half shrug. "It's familiar?" She reached across the counter, hand hovering like she wanted to touch mine, but wasn't sure if I'd accept it. "Kala, I hate how numb you've gotten to this." I finally met her eyes. "Numb isn't bad. Numb lets you plan a party and not wonder if your parents are going to ruin it." I turned to the notepad beside me. The guest list sat blank except for one scribbled word at the top. Confirmed. It was time to fill it out, with people who chose me. I started listing names, co-workers who sent me funny memes during lunch breaks, a neighbor who once helped me jump my car battery at 6 a.m. friends from my volunteer shift at the shelter. Narina, of course. No family, not this year. I could hear my mother's voice already, echoing from some imagined phone call. "Wow, all these strangers but not your own blood? That's sad." But what was really sad was how long I'd waited for that blood to act like they wanted me around. I pushed the letter further back in the drawer. "This time," I said aloud, mostly to myself, "I won't chase them. Narina didn't speak. She just nodded, like she'd been waiting years to hear me say that. I glanced out the kitchen window. The sun was higher now, stretching across the fence in long gold bands. Morning was giving way to noon. Time to start setting up the space, ordering extra chairs, or maybe fewer. I looked back down at my list. The names weren't long, but they were solid. And suddenly, that felt like enough. Everyone was somewhere else that day. The sky burned too blue that afternoon, the kind of brightness that felt performative, like the universe was throwing a party I wasn't invited to. After I finished taping the last balloon to the fence post, I stepped back, brushed my palms on my jeans, and took a breath. It wasn't much, just a few strings of lights, folding chairs in mismatched colors, and a modest cake chilling in the fridge. But it was mine and Narina's, and a few people who had RSVP'd not out of obligation but because they genuinely liked me. While I waited for the first guest to arrive, I made the mistake of opening my phone. It was like being sucker punched. There they were, Maris, Thane, Junia, and even my Aunt Verna, grinning like a glossy Christmas postcard. They stood in a sun-drenched backyard in Kansas, gathered around a grill, red Solo cups in hand, arms slung around each other like nothing in the world had ever gone wrong. Someone had tagged the photo. The caption burned hotter than the coals in their barbecue. "Real family doesn't forget where they came from." No mention of me. Not even a passive-aggressive "wish you were here." Just them, smiling, posting, pretending the day didn't mark something in my life they once claimed mattered. I stared at the photo until the screen blurred. Then I locked my phone and shoved it under a couch cushion like it was contaminated. They weren't just absent. They were somewhere else. Deliberately, publicly, happily, somewhere else. This wasn't new. The rejection had just never been this loud. Last Christmas, the whole family sat by the fireplace exchanging gifts. When it came time for mine, Maris handed me a squishy, misshapen sweater in a shade of oatmeal that looked like it had been pulled from the lost and found bin of a retirement home. She gave a smile too wide and said, "You've always liked practical things." Then, before I could even thank her, she turned to Junia and held out a velvet box with a wink. Inside was a perfume bottle, designer, gold-trimmed, imported. "Smells like success," Maris said. "You deserve it." Junia had barely peeled the wrapper off before the next gift appeared, a wallet, sleek and high-end, the kind you don't carry in your purse so much as you let it casually peek from the top to be admired. Why not me? I'd wanted to ask, but I knew better. The answer had already been rehearsed. "Calla, that kind of thing just doesn't suit you." Translation: You're not polished enough. You're not graceful like her. You're not worth the investment. It was always that way. If we both asked for the same thing, Junia got it. I got the speech. Even when we were kids, if she cried, someone rushed in with a Band-Aid and a cookie. When I cried, "You're being too sensitive." Over time, I stopped asking. I stopped hoping. And more dangerously, I started believing them. By the time guests began trickling into the backyard, I had put on my best face. I laughed. I refilled drinks. I complimented someone's earrings like I meant it. But when I ducked into the kitchen for a moment alone, I saw the cake I had bought for myself. Small, simple vanilla with pale yellow frosting. The kind a kid might pick out for their imaginary party. I sliced into it alone. Not because I was sad, but because no one else had bothered to remember this day mattered. And as I sat on the back step, fork in hand, I thought, if they could smile like that on the day they left me behind, if they could raise their glasses and post about real family without blinking, then maybe I didn't need to question anymore if I was the one who broke something. Because maybe, just maybe, I never belonged in the picture in the first place. I didn't cry that night. I didn't spiral or rage. Instead, I drafted a new invite list, one I would use from now on. I started with the people who showed up. Not perfectly, not with grand gestures, but consistently. The neighbor who brought extra folding chairs without being asked. Narina, who managed the playlist and made everyone feel like they belonged. My coworker Lila, who arrived with 2 bottles of wine and stories that made me laugh until my stomach hurt. I didn't leave any blank seats this time. I didn't write names in pencil. I didn't hope anyone would show up out of guilt. For the first time, I planned a future that didn't include apologies I was tired of begging for. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the yard. As laughter bubbled from the back porch and someone called my name to join the group photo, I realized I hadn't looked at my phone in hours. I had stopped waiting, and I felt more full than I had in years. When silence turns into a show, it was late morning, and the dishes from last night's gathering still sat stacked in the sink. I had planned to clean them after finishing a few emails, but instead I found myself scrolling. It was mindless, something between delay and denial. That's when a notification lit up my phone. Sable had messaged me on Instagram. "Have you seen this yet? Junia's out of pocket." I clicked the link without expecting much. Probably some cryptic quote about loyalty or broken families, which was Junia's favorite kind of digital sermon. But this wasn't cryptic. It was calculated. The video started with her in faux tears, those silent, shaking shoulders that said more than real crying ever could. She stared into the camera, her voice low but steady. Some people throw parties not because they're loved, but because they're scared of being alone. The screen cut to a slow pan of a birthday cake, clearly not mine, and Junia's smug expression returned just in time for her punchline. "It's giving. Desperation." Hashtags followed. #TruthHurts, #family. First #fake people music played in the background. Sultry, mocking. It was a Taylor Swift instrumental, ironic in the cruelest way. I didn't throw my phone or yell. I didn't even curse. I just sat back in my chair and let the humiliation settle over me like a second skin. It wasn't new, just louder. I hit save on the video, downloaded it, forwarded it to Orson with no caption. By now he knew what silence meant. By mid-afternoon I called my mother. I didn't want to, but sometimes dignity requires confrontation, not avoidance. She answered on the second ring. "Calla? I'm assuming you've seen what Junia posted." Pause. Then came the rehearsed sigh. "Oh, honey, she didn't mean you." I waited. Maris continued. "She's been going through a lot. You know how sensitive she is." She literally mimicked me. The setting, the wording, it was about me. Maris's breath hitched. I could already imagine the performance gearing up. "I am so tired of this," she said, voice cracking. "I try so hard to keep peace and all I get is blame. Maybe if you didn't always push us away, Junia wouldn't act out." "And maybe," I said, tone flat, "if you stopped justifying cruelty, you'd see where the rot is." Her sobs got louder. "I'm your mother, Calla. I carried you, fed you, gave up everything, and now I'm just an inconvenience to you?" I let the silence stretch. Her crying filled the space between us like fog, thick, obscuring. "You're not an inconvenience," I said, calm and sharp. "You're a manipulator. And I'm not falling for it." She hung up. I stared at my phone, not out of hurt but clarity, the kind that comes when you finally call a thing by its name. Orson swung by after work with Thai food in that steady way of his. We ate on the porch. He didn't bring it up. He never did until I did. "I saw the video," he said finally. "You okay?" I nodded, lips tight. "I'm done reacting." He tilted his head. "That's not like you." "I know." I set down my chopsticks. "But I'm done giving them fuel. This isn't about being right anymore. It's about protecting what's left of my sanity." I showed him the folder I'd started on my laptop, labeled "The Truth, No Edits." Inside were screenshots, videos, messages, every gaslight and guilt trip I'd saved, not for revenge, for record, for myself, in case I ever questioned what I lived through. He didn't say much, just nodded. It was enough. That night, I didn't post any cryptic responses or vague subtweets. I didn't defend myself in the group chat, where half of them watched in silence. I didn't tell Narina what happened. I just kept building that folder. Because sometimes, the most radical thing you can do isn't to shout. It's to document. And from that day on, I stopped giving them anything to misquote, not just emotionally robbed. By the end of that weekend, the noise had died down. No more subtweets, no more whispered comments passed through friends of friends. I hadn't looked at my phone in 2 days, and honestly, it felt like a detox I didn't know I needed. The silence from them wasn't peace, it was pause. But I was learning to make space for my own quiet. On Monday, Orson and I sat on the back porch, sipping watered-down lemonade. He was half listening to a podcast and half watching me scroll through my email. I didn't say much. I didn't need to. We'd gotten good at silent observation, but then he pointed to a flimsy flyer that had come in the mail. "Hey, why would we get this ad? It's for a luxury spa in Tacoma. You been hiding a secret weekend away?" I took the flyer and laughed out of reflex. I barely splurge on conditioner. You think I booked a facial package? But something about the print caught my eye. The last 4 digits of the card listed under the customer ID weren't familiar, yet the name was mine. I pulled out my laptop and opened my credit monitoring app. What started as curiosity turned into dread. 3 new credit cards had been opened in my name within the last 4 months. The balances? 1 nearing max. All of them unfamiliar vendors. Boutique jewelry, high-end hair tools, a luxury pet spa. I didn't say anything to Orson right away. I just got up, went inside, and sat at the kitchen island. The kitchen light flickered a little above me, one of those slow blinks that made you feel like you were in a thriller movie. I didn't panic. I opened a private browser window, typed, "How to report fraudulent identity use," and started reading. There was a dull pressure behind my eyes, but I didn't cry. Not then. Instead, I created a new folder in my email titled Theft, and I began. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. Not from fear, but from the kind of fury that wears silk gloves. I kept reviewing the vendor names. One of them, Crested Lane Jewelry, matched a brand my mother had once tagged in a photo online, a post of a bracelet with a caption that read, "For the woman who deserves everything." I opened her page, that same bracelet, worn in a selfie, time-stamped exactly 3 weeks after the card was opened. I felt a chill, not the kind that comes from cold, but from clarity. The next morning, I was brushing my teeth when a new email notification popped up. The subject line read, "Let's talk, just us girls." From Maris. I didn't open it immediately. I stared at it as the foam in my mouth went flat and bitter. Only after rinsing and sitting down at the kitchen table did I click. "Sweetheart," the message began, "I hate how tense things have gotten. We're family, and family should always come back together. I've been under some financial pressure lately. Nothing huge, just a couple things piling up. If you could help with the electric bill, I'd feel so seen and supported. It'd mean the world. I know you care. I raised you better than this tension." There it was, the bait wrapped in silk. I didn't reply. I forwarded the message into another folder. Proof, manipulation. Then I turned off notifications for her account entirely. That night, Orson noticed I wasn't reading, just sitting. "What's going through your head?" he asked. I didn't look up. "Do you remember what you said when we first got together?" He blinked. "Which part?" "That I needed to stop forgiving people just because I understood them." He smiled, then nodded. "Yeah, that still stands?" I closed the laptop and reached for my phone. "I'm calling a lawyer," I said. "Not for drama, just for clarity." By the end of the week, I had a virtual appointment with a consumer rights attorney based in Portland. She didn't gasp or clutch her pearls. She said, "It happens more often than you think, especially when parents think they still own a piece of their adult kids." The words hit like glass on tile. I wasn't devastated. I was done. Done with rationalizing theft as misunderstanding. Done with calling betrayal just how she is. This wasn't emotional neglect anymore. It was paper trails and forged consent. And if they came reaching again, it wouldn't be for a hug. It would be to grab what wasn't theirs. "Next time they reach for my name," I told Orson as we washed dishes that night, "it'll cut them." He nodded, handed me a towel, then sharpened the edge. And I did. The folders on my desktop weren't just files now. They were armor. They weren't done trying. But now, neither was I. The invitation came wrapped in familiarity. My mother's voice on the other end of the line, all silk and softness. "I'm making dinner this Saturday," she said. "Just us girls. No drama, I swear. I just want to see my daughter." She didn't say make things right. She didn't say I'm sorry. Just see my daughter. As if that alone could reset the last 3 decades. As if a pot roast could mend the kind of fractures lawyers were starting to look at. I didn't answer right away. Orson was making tea in the kitchen when I hung up. "Let me guess," he said, sliding me a mug. "She wants peace over pie." I gave a thin smile. "She wants something. She always does." He didn't try to dissuade me when I told him I'd go. He just said, "Then go, but keep both eyes open, and don't eat anything without a receipt." Saturday arrived like a storm that didn't want to commit. The clouds rolled in halfway, but left just enough sun to give the illusion of calm. I wore navy slacks and a white blouse. No jewelry, no softness. I didn't want anything for them to compliment. When I walked into my parents' house, I knew within seconds it wasn't just family. There were second cousins I hadn't seen in years, a great aunt from Topeka, even Junia's college roommate who once said I had a cold vibe. The dining table was dressed like a wedding venue. Candles, matching name cards, floral centerpieces that reeked of performance. My mother greeted me with open arms I didn't step into. "You look thin," she said. "Sit. We have your favorite, roasted Brussels sprouts." I sat, ate quietly, endured the shallow chatter, waited. Halfway through the lemon meringue pie, she leaned in and whispered, "Come out back. Just you and me, sweetheart." The patio was empty. The air smelled of lilac and manipulation. She pulled out a manila envelope and held it like it weighed nothing. "This isn't a big deal," she began, voice honey-sweet. "It's just a little document. Something to help your father and me cover a loan. It's not even in your name. Just a co-signature." I didn't even look at it. "You brought me here," I said slowly. "Dressed a dinner table like a ceasefire, just so I'd be too polite to say no in front of your audience." Her smile faltered. "I didn't want to do this over the phone," she said. "No, you wanted the show." The silence between us was brittle. "You always make things harder than they need to be, Calla. And you always think guilt is a contract." I walked back inside, smiled at the table, sat down like nothing happened. The next morning, I posted a single paragraph on Facebook. "It's wild how often love looks like a fancy dinner followed by a signature request. If your affection comes with paperwork, I'm out, forever. No names, no accusations. But by lunch, I had over 70 views from family members. No likes, no comments. Just a trail of digital footprints leading into their own discomfort. Junia didn't message me, but she unfollowed me. Cousin Renee sent a sunflower emoji. Aunt Meg left the family group chat. That night, Orson made pasta. I sat on the couch, legs folded, rereading my post like it belonged to someone bolder than I felt. "They didn't fight back," I said. "They're regrouping," he replied. "You weren't supposed to tell your side." "Well," I said, taking a bite of spaghetti, "that's too damn bad." I opened a new folder on my laptop, labeled it Declaration 1. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't begging. I was documenting. I was stating. This was no longer a feud. It was a record. Let them pretend they didn't know. Let them talk in whispers behind screens. They tried manipulation, then guilt. And now? Now they were coming for my dignity. They tried guilt. Next, they chose shame. The next morning, I opened my laptop with the kind of stillness that only comes after a storm. Not because the wind had died, but because I'd braced for another hit. I checked my notifications out of habit, not expectation, and that's when I saw it. A private message from 80. An old high school friend who hadn't spoken to me in years, her name popping up now like a bad omen. "Hey," she wrote. "This might be none of my business, but I think you should see this." Below it was a link to a low-res video, uploaded to a barely used family account that I didn't even know still existed. I clicked. It started on a backyard deck I recognized. Aunt Margot's place in Topeka. A circle of plastic lawn chairs, a folding table draped with a floral sheet, and at the center, a large yellow bowl filled with water. My mother, my Aunt Junia, and a few of the cousins stood around it. Margot raised her voice dramatically, as if performing on a reality show. "Today we cleanse our family of betrayal, of disloyalty, of cold-hearted separation masked as independence." She dipped her fingers into the bowl, flicked water toward the group. Some of it landed on Unia's cheek. She laughed. Mom didn't look solemn. She looked smug. Someone in the background clapped. The video ended with Junia saying, "Amen to family who actually stays loyal." I didn't throw the laptop. I didn't scream. I just stared. the kind of frozen where your bones forget how to be part of your body. Then I downloaded the clip and added it to the folder labeled Evidence Rituals. I didn't feel baptized. I felt burned. That evening, I pulled out my budget sheets, opened the spreadsheet I hadn't touched in months. Rows and rows of transaction history blinked back at me. Venmo transfers to Junia for textbooks, Zelle payments to Maris for emergency bills, receipts for pharmacy runs, and a dozen lines just marked family support. The total for the past 12 months was $12,484.21. 12,000 gone. I added one more line. Date, today, note, finalized. Then I opened a blank email. To Maris, Junia, Margot, Thane. Subject, update. Effective immediately, I will no longer be providing any financial support. Do not contact me for money. Attached, finalledger.pdf, no extra lines. No explanations, no apologies. I hit send. Then I took a deep breath and didn't exhale until I closed the browser. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, and for the first time in years, they didn't tremble with second-guessing. Dinner that night was quiet. Orson made grilled cheese and tomato soup, the kind of meal we defaulted to when life felt heavy and dumb. He set a bowl in front of me. You didn't owe them any of it. I nodded, dipping the sandwich, watching the cheese stretch and tear. I know. You never had to pay for love that wasn't real. That one hit harder. I swallowed too fast and coughed, waving off his concern. Do you think they'll come after me for real now? I asked, half joking, half expecting him to say yes. He shrugged. They already were. Now they just know you're not going to stand there while they pick your pockets and call it affection. I nodded slowly. They baptized themselves in plastic bowls. Yeah, he chuckled. You baptized your damn self in receipts and boundaries. That made me smile. It was bitter, but it was real. I went back to my desk and renamed the folder. The Truth, No More Mercy. Inside it, the ritual video sat beside the financial spreadsheet, an archive of sins dressed in Sunday clothes. For years, they'd taught me to confuse silence with grace. But grace doesn't mean surrender. Grace doesn't mean keep giving until you're empty. Grace sometimes is saying, no more. So I stopped, and for the first time I didn't feel empty. I felt like someone finally closing a leak that had been draining me for decades. Later that night, I stared at the ceiling and waited. Waited for the regret, for the panic, for the inevitable voice inside me that always whispered, you'll miss them. It didn't come. Instead, I heard Orson breathing steady beside me. I heard the quiet hum of the fridge. I felt the stillness of a home that wasn't built on guilt. I wasn't proud, not yet, but I wasn't ashamed either. And that was new. The cost of their silence just went up. I had just finished folding laundry, something grounding, repetitive, safe, when the call came in. The name on the screen wasn't familiar, but the area code was Portland, and something in my stomach tightened like it already knew this would be different. Miss Callakeen? The voice asked. This is Claire Rasmussen from Perkins & Rowe, legal counsel. The last time I heard a sentence begin like that, it was a scam call trying to collect on an overdue parking ticket that never existed. But Claire sounded real, measured, heavy, but not hesitant. I'm calling in regard to an inquiry we received through our identity fraud division, she said. Your name appears on a financial application filed at Kestrel Credit Union. It was processed last fall. I hadn't applied for anything last fall, Claire continued. We reviewed the physical documents. Your social security number was included. So was your signature. My throat went dry. I hadn't signed anything for anyone in over a year. Did you say signature? I asked. It bears strong resemblance to your handwriting, she confirmed. But upon analysis, we believe there's clear indication of forgery. My fingers were already moving, grabbing a pen, scribbling on the back of a receipt. Filed by who? We can't legally disclose that unless you choose to press charges, but we have enough to file a criminal complaint, if you wish to move forward. I stared at the wall, the beige paint blurring into noise. I already knew who did it. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a stranger who guessed my social security number and practiced my loops and slants. It was family. More precisely, it was someone I had once believed would never go that far. I didn't speak for a moment. Then I said, "Please send everything you can to my email. I'll consider next steps." Claire's voice softened. "I know this is hard." I almost laughed. "You have no idea." When I hung up, I didn't cry, didn't scream. I didn't call Orson or Narina. I just sat in the quiet and repeated one sentence in my head like a metronome. They didn't just lie to me, they used me. By the end of that same day, my inbox was a battlefield. First, a message from a college friend, Jasmine, who now worked in branding. She forwarded a screenshot from Junia's most recent collab, a sponsorship for a wellness skincare line. "They dropped her," Jasmine wrote. "Apparently the brand team did a background scrub, found her shady TikTok, and your public response. Said it didn't align with their values." Right below it was a second message from a former coworker of Verna's. "Just thought you should know," it read. "HR opened a probe into Verna today. Word is, someone flagged her for misusing company email to circulate that weird video about spiritual cleansing. Not cool when you're a manager." I blinked. Twice. No text from Junia, no calls from Verna, no apology from Maris, of course not. They weren't sorry they used me. They were sorry they got caught. I leaned back in my chair and opened the Truth, No More Mercy folder. I added 2 new subfolders, Legal Prep and Collateral Damage. I wasn't out for blood, but I wasn't about to bandage their wounds either, not when they'd walked barefoot into glass they laid themselves. That night, as the rain started tapping lightly against the kitchen window, Orson pulled out 2 mugs and filled them with tea. "How bad?" he asked, sliding mine across the table. "Forgery," I said simply. His jaw clenched. "They actually—" "Yep." He didn't ask if I was pressing charges. He just waited, and I answered slowly, "Not yet." His brow lifted. "I want them to sit in it first," I said. "The shame, the silence, the knowledge that I know, and that I'm not running." He nodded once. "You want them to unravel." "No," I corrected, sipping my tea. "I want them to see themselves clearly. No excuses, no fake apologies, just reflection." A pause. "You always think clearer when you're angry," he said, almost admiringly. I smiled. Not warm, not cruel, just tired. "It's not anger, not anymore. It's math. It's record-keeping." My laptop sat open beside me. I clicked through my folders, then paused on a blank Word doc and typed out the heading, Victim Impact Statement Draft, not because I'd made a decision, but because someday soon, I might. The next morning, as I scrolled aimlessly through local news with a cup of stale coffee, I found an op-ed about accountability in family businesses. It wasn't about me, but it might as well have been, because one sentence stood out like it had been written just for me. "Silence isn't protection, it's complicity." That's when I knew they were no longer just toxic. Now, they were dangerous. I didn't plan the moment it happened. There was no dramatic music swelling in the background, no inner monologue about courage. It was just a quiet Tuesday morning, sunlight slanting across my kitchen tiles, when I clicked Create Post. Not a draft, not a journal entry, a public post. I titled it, What Family First Really Looked Like. Below the title, I started attaching, not opinions, not memories blurred by bias, just evidence. A scan of the bank statement with my name tied to a credit card I never applied for. The forged signature, side by side with a document I had signed years ago. Screenshots of the TikTok Junia had posted mocking lonely narcissists who throw themselves pity parties. The email from Maris, asking for money to cover this one last bill, right after the emotional landmines. A blurry photo from the BBQ, where they toasted marshmallows under string lights without a single mention of my name. The video of Aunt Margot flinging water from a salad bowl in some half-serious, fully petty cleansing ceremony. I added a caption. "I'm not looking for revenge, just resolution. This is what family has looked like for me. This is my side. I deserve to say it." I read it twice, made one small edit to punctuation, then hit post. That was it. I got up, made myself coffee, watered the plant Narina gave me 2 birthdays ago. I didn't check my phone for an hour. By the time I did, it was chaos. The post had been shared nearly 700 times. There were comments from people I didn't know, messages from friends I hadn't spoken to in years. "I had no idea you went through this." My sister did the same to me, Thank you for speaking up. This post is going to save someone. Maybe me. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just stared at the screen, my hand shaking slightly, not from fear, but release. A few quiet pings came through later that night. A private message from my cousin Lenny. I always wondered, none of it ever made sense. Another from a friend of Verna's. She used to talk like you owed them something. Now I know what she meant. Someone I didn't recognize at all. I screenshotted everything before they take it down. You're not alone. Then came the counter-strike. Maris didn't tag me, of course. She never does when she wants to maintain her image. But the post was unmistakably about me. A photo of her with Junia on a park bench, all soft edges and fall filters. The caption, "No parent is perfect, but love is loving your kids even when they abandon you, even when they twist the story. Grace is for everyone." It garnered hearts, hugs, and the usual comments from her circle. Mostly people who hadn't seen my post yet. But not everyone played along. Aunt Elise wrote, "Grace doesn't cover fraud." A guy named Caleb, who I vaguely remembered from childhood summer barbecues, said, "It's funny how nobody refuted what was posted. They just cried louder." Within hours, Maris disabled comments. Then she made the post visible to friends only. She never messaged me. Junia never apologized. Verna apparently took a digital detox. And still, I didn't reply. I didn't post again. Not because I had nothing left to say, but because I'd already said what mattered. The truth didn't need my defense. It stood on its own. That evening, Orson poured me a glass of wine and asked, "How do you feel now?" I considered it. "Lighter," I said, "and heavier at the same time." He nodded like he understood. Healing's like that. It doesn't always come wrapped in peace. Sometimes it arrives wearing armor. "I didn't do it to ruin them," I said quietly. "I did it to stop hiding." He raised his glass. "To that." The toast wasn't loud, just a soft clink in a quiet room. I spent that night answering a few messages, flagging a couple of hateful ones, and turning off my notifications. Then I curled up on the couch with a blanket I bought myself after Christmas last year. The first holiday I spent alone on purpose. That blanket had become something sacred. Not because it was warm, but because no one had to approve of it. I didn't have to earn it. Neither did my truth. And for once, I felt like that was enough. I closed my eyes, not with fear or guilt or second-guessing, but with a breath that felt whole. And with every truth exposed, I started becoming someone new. I woke up to gray light leaking in through the blinds, and a sense of stillness so deep it felt like something had shifted in the night, quietly, but permanently. The kind of shift you can't undo, even if you wanted to. I didn't feel the twitch to scroll through other people's lives or scan for damage control. Instead, I walked to the kitchen barefoot, brewed a pot of coffee, and stood at the window watching the neighbor's dog chase a squirrel like the world hadn't cracked open the day before. But it had, and not in a violent, explosive way. It cracked like old ice finally giving way beneath pressure that had built for decades. I sipped my coffee and opened my laptop. Not because I had something to prove, but because I didn't have anything to hide. There it was, my post, still pinned, still visible, still mine. The truth was still out in the open, and I wasn't scrambling to explain it. I wasn't checking who had liked it, or who had stayed silent. I wasn't waiting for a phone call that wouldn't come. I had said what needed saying, and they had heard it. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of implications, of reputations reevaluated, of quiet conversations happening behind closed doors. Doors I no longer tried to knock on. Maris hadn't reached out. Not with a message, not with a voicemail, not even with another cryptic post. Maybe she was licking her wounds. Or maybe, for once, she was actually listening. That morning, I received an email from the identity fraud lawyer, Claire. "Calla," it read, "I wanted to update you that the documentation is complete. The evidence of forgery is conclusive. No further signatures or cooperation are required from you at this point, unless you choose to proceed with a formal complaint." I read it twice, then minimized the window. I wasn't ready to press the button yet, but I wasn't scared to anymore. I thought about everything I'd uploaded. The receipts, the bank statements, the email Maris sent me asking for money while calling it healing, the staged cleansing video, the TikTok, The backyard BBQ they hosted on my birthday, tagging it #FamilyFirst. I hadn't embellished. I hadn't fabricated. I had simply told the truth and let it speak for itself. And it did. The comments were still rolling in. Some supportive, some stunned, a few accusatory. But most were from people who recognized the shape of my pain in their own lives. People who said, "I thought I was the only one," or "You just described my mother," or simply, "Thank you." I hadn't meant to start a movement, but sometimes truth becomes contagious. Later that afternoon, I went to the community garden. The sun was peeking through in patches, and I needed to feel something grow that wasn't resentment. As I dug my hands into the soil, planting early tomato starters, I found myself humming a tune I didn't recognize. Maybe something Orson played in the car once, or maybe something my spirit had been holding in silence. Across from me, a woman named Lila from my volunteer group waved. She didn't ask how I was. She just passed me a trowel and said, "The earth's finally soft enough. It's a good day to put things down." I smiled. Yeah, it really is. That evening back home, I made dinner without rushing. I didn't burn the garlic. I didn't overcook the pasta. I poured myself a glass of wine. Not because I needed to forget, but because I wanted to celebrate remembering who I was before all the bargaining and begging. At the table, Orson raised an eyebrow as I served the food. "You look taller." "Maybe I let go of something heavy," I said, smiling. We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before he asked, "Do you think they'll ever apologize?" I shook my head. "I think they'll justify, they'll spin, they'll perform. But apologize? That would require admitting they weren't the victims. Would it help if they did?" I considered the question, then answered, "Only if it was real. But even then, it's not the apology I needed, it's the boundary." After dinner, I went back to my laptop and reopened my folder. I didn't add anything new. I didn't need to. But I did create one last document, a personal one. A kind of ending I hadn't allowed myself before. It was titled, "Final Letter Not to Be Sent." I wrote it like a release, not forgiveness, just release. "Dear Maris," I began. I kept it short. 3 paragraphs. No anger, no pleading. Just a quiet acknowledgement that I was stepping out of the loop, the one where I tried, they took, and I twisted myself into pieces just to keep a place at a table that only served guilt. I saved the file and closed the laptop. Healing isn't always soft. Sometimes it's sharp, like cutting a rope that's been around your neck. But when the rope falls, you breathe like it's the first time. I looked out the window. The sky had turned lavender. A breeze moved through the trees like a sigh of relief, and I realized something I hadn't let myself believe until now. They didn't get to be the end of my story. I did. Looking back, I wish I could tell my younger self one thing. You don't have to keep bleeding just because someone else keeps handing you the knife. We're raised to believe family means forever. That forgiveness is automatic. That blood outweighs harm. But healing, real healing, isn't about pretending something didn't break. It's about finally saying, "This hurt me, and I won't carry it quietly anymore." And the moment I stopped hiding behind shame, the moment I let truth speak louder than obligation, something shifted. Not in them, in me. So if you're out there wondering if your pain is valid, if your story is bad enough to walk away, let me say this clearly. You don't need permission to protect your peace. You don't need a scar to prove you were cut. I'm not here to tell you what justice should look like in your life, but I am saying silence isn't healing. And love without respect? That's just control in a nicer outfit. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you were told you could never leave? What did it teach you about love, truth, or even yourself? Drop a comment below. Type 1 if this story hit close to home, or let me know where you're watching from. And if this wasn't your cup of tea, I'd still love to hear why. Every voice adds something. And hey, if this video made you feel seen, supported, or just a little braver, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next story. There's more truth to tell, and you deserve to hear it. Thanks for being here, really.